Hello, Nick family. Welcome to the Queen's Court. I'm your host, Stephanie, aka Queen. And as always, we have a lot to talk about. I'm on location. The internet is a little funky, not Georgia funky, but still a little funky. So hopefully we'll be able to get through the show. If not, I got the backup crew that can bring you on home. We're gonna talk about last week's games, particularly the Detroit game. I want to get into the Knicks start against Detroit, and it just seems to be a pattern for me. So I'm interested in what the rest of the panel thinks about that. We'll also talk about the game tonight versus Toronto. Keys to the game, player matchups. We'll touch on the Emirates. I hope I said that right. Cup game versus Atlanta on Wednesday. And then we'll also talk about Precious Achiuwa, who's back, what that means for the team. And if that's going to impact Jericho Sims. It seems like over the first two games that he's been back, it has. So I'm interested in what you guys think about it and also the panel. So let me bring them in. Tony Crow, Nicks and Bruises, Jeff Clafter, the Happily Ever Clafter Daily Sports blog, and then, of course, Lady and the Chef, two Nick Chicks. How's everybody?
Good.
Peace, Queen. Peace, panel. Peace,
All right.
chat.
All right. So the Knicks had three games this past week. I thought Orlando was a big game. I thought that would tell me a lot about the Knicks, and we just went in there and opened up a can of whoop ass on them. And it was good to see them just come out super focused, beat Charlotte. It was a little bit of a grind in the first half, but then they figured it out. They found the way. And then the Detroit game. Now, I will say this. I'm not going to underestimate having two of your top seven players out. So this idea that the Knicks should be the same team without Towns and without Cam, I don't I'm not a believer in that. However, I still feel like they should have found a way to win the game. Like there was enough left for guys to step up and win the game. Obviously, with Towns out, and I'm interested in what you three think about this and the chat. With Towns out, it really changes the play because he stretches the floor. It's a lot of ball movement. It's in the key. Without him, you kind of have to play a different game, I think. So I'm interested in what you all think about that. And then the last thing I'll say is it was good. I've been watching the Knicks since the early 80s. And it was good to see the halftime show. Gerald Wilkins, was it Rory? I think it was Rory Sparrow. I was like, wow, like they went all the way back. And those who've been watching the Knicks longer than I have, Jerry Lucas and those guys who I don't remember. So that was good to see. And obviously, um, I wonder if they were disappointed in the effort at least. Anyway, let's just start with the Detroit game and just your thoughts on it. Anything that stands out. Tony, Jeff, Lady and the Chef, then Lady Chef, you'll lead it off the next time. Shout out to the chat, by the way.
I'll let you go into depth, but I agree with you. The slow starts have been a pattern, and it's been detrimental for the most part when it happens. And it's been against some of the lower echelon teams as well. So yeah, that's something that has to be fixed. I agree with you again with Orlando being a highlight, and I thought they would be a much more dangerous team, and we handled them no problem. And then we lay an egg against Detroit. I was very disappointed, coming off one of the better highs of the season, to right back to can I really trust this team?
Right, right. Jeff?
Well, I was expecting Jalen Brunson to miss the Detroit game, not Carl Anthony Towns. So
that was a surprise.
That was definitely a surprise, and I think it had a massive impact on the team, just from the standpoint that Towns from November 23rd to December 5th was our leading rebounder in every single game, and he never had fewer than 12 rebounds in any of those games. And 12 was one game he had 12, and the rest of them he was far above that. He exceeded that by as many as 6-8 rebounds, and that was a real weakness against Detroit. We got pounded on the glass. And Precious had 10 rebounds, but it didn't seem like anybody else really pulled their weight. Jalen had 5 turnovers, which is highly uncharacteristic.
Correct.
Uh,
Correct.
we missed 11 free throws in a 9-point game. Just I don't know, just was like one of those nights for whatever reason where we didn't have it and Detroit did. I mean, Beasley was like 7 of 10 from 3 or something ridiculous like that. And every time Cade Cunningham sees the Knicks, he perks up. I mean, he's a Knick killer. That guy he's going to be incredible. I mean, he's just kind of starting
He is.
to find his game and get comfortable in the league, but he's really turning into a weapon. So that was one of the things that stood out to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt about it. Do you think they also were surprised that it was Allen and not Brunson? And you think that might have threw them off? Because I just felt like they didn't come out with the energy that I expected they would.
I kind of think they do. It's almost like they didn't know what to do without him in the lineup, because that starting 5 has been really solid. And I know we did play pretty well without him in the Brooklyn game at least for the first 25 minutes. But they just seemed discombobulated all night long, really, especially on the defensive end where we couldn't stop anything. Like that was the worst defensive performance of the year, and there have been several stinkers. But I was really disappointed in the defensive effort. But I do think that not just Towns, but also Campaign not being there is a big deal too, because Campaign's a good point of attack defender, and it allows. I think Brunson played 44 minutes. If Campaign is healthy, I doubt that he gets that big a minute. I mean, I think that Cam's going to at least get 8 of those, for sure. So to me, Campaign missing was a big factor as well.
Yeah. Definitely. Lady Nisha?
Yeah, I think you guys already hit a lot of the points on the nail on the head with that one. But like instantly for me when I was watching a game and I went and watched the replay several times, Mikel threw the ball over within the 10-minute mark. Sims lost the ball within the 8-minute mark in the paint. It was just very sloppy, lots of turnovers. The Knicks were able to get within 4 and then 2 at one point. But I thought Detroit had a little bit of a shot party. Beasley had a 3-point shot party. Duran had a dunk party. Cunningham, 15 assists, just, his composure, like Jeff hit on, I thought was just flawless. I loved what I saw from him. And he found a way to pick apart the Knicks defense. I thought he did that really well. And then I just thought in the fourth quarter, I thought the Knicks were going to be able to come within a certain gain grips within the game, but it was just a lot of the Knicks playing catch up. The Knicks kept trying to, they would fight, and that comes from that slow start. But when Detroit went on that 14-2 run early in the fourth, it's a wrap, And this win for Detroit, what does it give them? It's their 16th. They won after losing 16 straight to the Knicks. But this just showed me overall, I think that because they haven't beat the Knicks since November of 2019, but the Knicks continue to struggle against the pick and rolls, the perimeter defense. And like Jeff said, the free throws they weren't knocking them down, but just not a good game by the Knicks. And this was one of the games that I was looking for the Knicks to capitalize on a team that they should be beating. But to your point, Detroit is playing a lot better. They're showing that they're not the team that we've seen the last few seasons.
And to your point, the Knicks got it within 1 or 2, and they went on a 14-2 run. So they were able to respond, right? That does say a lot about the team. But I'm not letting the Knicks off the hook. Like I said, listen, you're playing without Towns, that's significant. You're playing without Camp, in opinion, that's significant. But you still got to find a way to win that basketball game. One of the things that I said coming into the season is like, wow, if Towns miss a game, if Brunson misses a game, OG and Mikel, they have it in them to step up. Like last year, sure, um, Hart stepped up for us in the playoffs, but I was always wondering when the clock was going to strike 12 because that's just not his game. But with Mikel and OG's, like they got a lot in the tank offensively. They got a lot in their bag. If Brunson can't go, if Towns can't go, they should be able to step up. And that just wasn't the case. And Mikel is playing better. He's playing better on the offensive end. He's definitely playing better on the defensive end. His screen navigation is better. He's moving his feet better. He's using his length better. He looks much better on the defensive end. But that heat check three, man, when we had the opportunity on that possession to go up, you know, um, whenever we're coming back, I feel like you got to take the lead. Like get into two, get into one. You got to get over the hump. And that shot, I think he missed it. And I think after that is when they went on their 14 to 2 run. Um, how significant, and I know Tony or Jeff spoke to this, how significant is campaign out, or is this just Towns thing being out and trying to figure out how to win, without him? Um, how much do you think Cam not being there impacted the team? Lady in the Chef, we'll start with you.
I think Cam being out definitely made somewhat of a difference because you needed, I think he's another option that this team could use. His energy, just that veteran experience that he could bring. And he's really good on the defensive end as well. He's like that annoying mosquito or that fruit fly that just won't go away. He can be that on the defense for this next team. But to me, I still scratch my head because I'm trying to figure it out. Like, was it so much that there was an emphasis on us missing campaign and Carl Anthony? And then I question the stability of this Knicks team when you don't have certain key players in this game, because we saw that in I don't know which game it was. It was very recent. I don't know if it was the Charlotte game or the game before last. The Knicks were up and Tibbs sat Brunson down. He had to put Brunson back in because there was no flow to the offense. Like the ball was just kind of going nowhere. And it wasn't necessarily that the Knicks were playing sloppy, but and I said this before. I said, we got Carl Anthony so late in the game, but I said, wow, if the Knicks didn't have him, I don't know if we would have as many wins as we have now, because you don't have Mitchell Robinson in. And I think even if you did have Mitchell Robinson, there would be these struggles, these woes there. But I think for me, even if you don't have certain key players, I think the biggest issue is the lack of defense on this team. This Knicks team doesn't play good defense.
You can't get stopped. And to their credit, I thought the defense had gotten better up until the Detroit game. Like I thought it was good against Orlando. I thought it was good against Charlotte. And at times it wasn't like the beginning of the season, but this was like a this Detroit game. It's like we could not get one stop. Um, Tony, I'll start with you. Let's get into um, Precious. Let's get into Precious Achiuwa, who made his return. I think he came back, I want to say in the Charlotte game, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Played 12 minutes, maybe 14 minutes. Um, I'm not sure it might have been the Detroit game where he started the second half, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, what have you seen from Precious with his return? Any surprises? Um, and what do you think he's gonna add? And then we'll go to Lady and the Chef and Jeff.
Right now I feel like, pardon me, anything we get from him is a bonus. I'm not expecting him to really peak and find himself. Remember, he missed this whole year. Some training camp, a lot of conditioning, things of that nature are gonna have to fall in place. So, I hope the minute restriction actually continues and he's eased back in. But he's definitely going to be beneficial. But we'll see the best as the season goes on. Right now, he's going to have to rely on just spurts, like I guess. he can't be used like in the past to garnish the workload.
Any surprise, and Lady and the Chef and Jeff, when you go, you can answer this as well. Tony, any surprise in that first game that he got as many minutes as he did and that Sims only played 3 minutes?
Um, I mean that was right around where I thought he should be. So no. Um, I think we should really ease him. You know what I mean? That hamstring, we don't want it to be reoccurring. So
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that he's back now. Keep him here. So I wasn't surprised at that much because Tibbs is still gonna. If the limit is 15, you know what I mean, and he needs him, he's gonna give him the whole 15. You know what I mean?
Right.
So he's still gonna maximize his whatever the restriction is.
Any surprise that Sims only got 3 minutes, or that was kind of what you was expecting that when he came back, Sims would get less minutes?
More so, the surprise would be with Cat being out. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something you know what I mean. The one good stat for him has been his defense, right? So he should be utilized even more, I think, with Cat being out, but not so much because of pressures, just with the
Mm-hmm.
absence of
Mm-hmm.
Cat. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. You muted.
Oh no, I was done. I was saying.
Okay. Okay. All right. Lady and the Chef, just your thoughts on Precious, what you think he can bring, and any thoughts on that he's playing more minutes than Sims, or is this what you expected?
Well, one is good to see Precious back. To see him back on the floor. Um, I think right now what he can bring to this team is that effort that we saw him bring last year, that extra effort. I think he's gonna play really well on the floor with OG at the same time. But I'm not surprised that he got more minutes than Jericho Sims. I kind of knew this was going to happen. And shout out to Divalux because she's been calling this for a while. She kept saying when he comes back, she was like, I know Sims minutes is going to go down. But I think the more trickier question for me and what I'm trying to figure out, and maybe one of you guys can answer this, is Carl Anthony was out and he played Huck Porty, who we've been wanting to see play more minutes. He played Huck Porty a bunch of minutes, but didn't play Sims but 3 minutes. And to your point, Steph, you said this before. You said what Tibbs is doing right now is he's allowing Sims, he's giving him the floor. Do it, show me what you can do so you can prove to me that I can keep continuing to play you and give you the floor and give you the minutes. And he's been doing that. And I think Sims has been showing better effort and looking better so far this season, right? He started off a little rough the first couple of games, but he's been looking good. But I was a little confused by the Detroit game because I said, well, he's playing Huck Porty. Huck Porty looked like at times he was a little tired and winded. He could have split some of those minutes with Jericho Sims and gave him some of the minutes and kind of evened it out, and then gave Precious the floor like as he's been doing with Sims. So I was a little confused by that. And again, this is just the logic that I keep trying to figure out with Tom Thibodeau. I'm done. I'll let Jeff go because I'm gonna go on the whole rant.
Well, I think Sims kind of auditioned himself off the court at the beginning of that Detroit game because he got the start and we got off to a slow start. And I think Tibbs was like, yeah, I'm not having that. And then if you notice when Precious played in the third quarter, we had a nice run to start the third quarter and we closed that gap. And as Queen said, we never quite were ever able to get over the hump. But when Precious was in there, I felt like we did make a run, and he's just, as Tony said, not in basketball shape yet. Like in his first game back, I think he played 4 minutes and he looked so gassed. I mean, he looked like he'd run a double marathon on the bench, like just gasping for air. I was like, get that man some oxygen, you know? And so it's going to be a little bit as far as that's concerned. With Sims, I mean, his numbers rim protection wise have been elite so far this year. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we did struggle in that Detroit game down the stretch and in the at certain points, is because maybe it would have been good to put him back in the fourth quarter and when we were hemorrhaging points. you know, but it's easy to second guess the coach on those sorts of things. I kind of feel like Sims is a fringe rotation player anyway, so I'm not overly shocked anytime he doesn't get minutes. And frankly, I think in a lot of ways, Huck Porty has looked better when he's been on the floor. Even I don't know, Sims is really weird because the eye test doesn't match the advanced stats to me. And
Correct.
so I'm
That is
kind of like
correct.
confused. I'm like, do I just not know basketball or what is going on with Jericho on that? Because I don't like every time I see him on the court, I'm like, this is not good. And then but then, you know, you look at the advanced stats and it's like he's elite. And I'm just not saying that at all. And I will say he's been better up until Detroit, but nobody was good at the beginning of that Detroit game. So I don't want to pin that all on him. I don't think that's fair. But
Right.
I think you did see moments where Huck Porty looked kind of nice. I mean, you see that he's got more offensive game than either one of the other two options at center when Cat is out. I mean, the one
Right.
thing I forgot, well, I didn't forget, but I wanted to forget about Precious is he gets the ball down low and all he has to do is dunk the ball and he'll throw it over the backboard. He'll throw it into the first row. He'll like every shot at the basket is an adventure with him. And so
Yeah.
I'm not really enjoying that part of his game very much, but what I do like, and I think it was Tony who said this first, is when you get him on the floor with OG and Anunoby, the switchability and the lockdown ability, you kind of saw glimpses of that being true. You know, you saw glimpses of that maybe being a lineup that we can use as kind of a stopper lineup, you know, with especially if he gets to see time with Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges all on the floor together. They're extraordinarily switchable in that configuration. And if Campaign is in that lineup as well, you know, or another big, maybe Mitch, you know, defensively, you would just really see the Knicks being able to lock in and lock down better than certainly they have all season long. So from that standpoint, I'm encouraged, but long way to go.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, with Precious, you could play Precious at the five and OG, and they did that. You know, against Detroit when they were playing Isaiah. You know, Isaiah Stewart. Listen, I have a love hate relationship with Precious, and I think mostly it's the rim finishing. You know, other than that, he's been really good for us, really solid for us. You know, last season, this season he came in. You know, he got a rebound, he dribbled it up the court. I'm like, wow, that's another, you know, element to the team that Precious can bring the ball at least over half court. Then he got a pass in the key, and this happened in both games. But I remember in the Charlotte game, he got a pass in the key, and he made a pass, an interior pass to OG and Anobi for two. So just the interior passing that you can get from Precious Achiuwa, that helps us. The switchability helps us. The rebounds helps us. The block shots helps us. You know, so I'm gonna give him grace with the missing underneath the rim. It don't take much. You could just blow on him and the ball is going all the way on the. I'm not sure what that's about, you know, but I'm gonna give him grace with that because of the other things um that he does. I think he's really gonna be helpful. And you know, Jeff's point, the different lineups you're gonna be able to put out there with Precious Achua, and he's, you know, he's not an OG Anunoby on offense. He's not a Mikal Bridges on offense, but he can move the ball. You know, you can get some interior passing. He can, you know, he has a little floater. So Ajay said, "Watch it, Queen. The president of the Precious Achua Club is in the house." Um, so I'm really happy that he's back. And you know, I always thought when he returned, Sims would be situational. That was just my thing. And I think to Jeff's point again, the advanced stats say one thing, the eye test says another. I do think Jericho Sims has been much more active lately. But the thing about Jericho Sims is you cannot trust him on the offensive end. That's why you don't pass him the ball. he'll roll. He's rolling down the lane free and clear. They will not pass him the ball. And then when they do, he bumbles it. And so now there's lack of trust, right? Porty comes in the game. First time he rolled, boom, they give him the ball. You know what I mean? Because they trust that he's going to be able to catch it and do something with it. And listen, there have been times when Sims has caught the ball and dunked it. But to me, I feel like it's an adventure. It's a hit or miss when you're giving him the ball on offense, other than a dribble handoff. So if Precious can give us that rim protection, it's kind of early to look at advanced stats. It's only been 2 games. But if you can get that same thing from Precious and a bit on the offensive end and some switchability, blocks, rebounds, then yeah, um, I would definitely go with Precious. Um, let's talk about anything else on Precious and Sims.
The only thing with Sims for me is I don't think he's capable to fill in. He's not capable to step up. So if you need him to do anything more, you know what I mean. He's not going to be able to do that. So almost like what Jeff is saying, as a fringe rotation guy, I agree. It's like a third stringer. He can step up to the second stringer. You know what I mean. But when you have him at that second stringer role, you can't expect him to elevate and give you more than anything else as any
Great
other
point.
role. So, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Let me just shout the chat out before we move on. Rick James, appreciate you. Brandon Schutz, if this is your first time, welcome. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button. If it's not your first time, welcome back. Keith Turner, appreciate you. The coolest 718, appreciate you. Jarrell in the building. Nick Yak in the building. Mike Boy. Did I miss anybody? I think I got Robert Woodard. Appreciate you. I think I got everybody. Kareem Grant. Appreciate you, my brother. I hope you're gonna be at the game, Washington game. Um, December 30th. We're taking a road trip down to Washington, DC. Whoever wants to join us. Andrew K, I appreciate you. Mega NYK in the building. Appreciate you. Wonder Woman. Appreciate you. All right. Let's just move on to the defense, the Detroit game notwithstanding. Have you seen any improvement in the defense over the past week or so? And if so, what have you seen? Jeff, we'll start with you.
Well, the defense was what stood out to me in the Charlotte game in the third quarter. I think they had 13 points or something crazy like that, and we were just flying around the court. I mean, I was really impressed. I was like, wow, where did this come from, and how can we bottle it and sell it and keep it going? Because they actually looked like a cohesive unit that was locking it down, and maybe that was just a function of Charlotte not having any good offensive players with, the injuries that they have. So that I don't know what to attribute that to necessarily, but I think Mikal Bridges has been better. As you noted at the beginning of the show, I really like what I've seen from him of late. He kind of feels like he's starting to get comfortable a little bit, which is good. I kind of feel like we need one more point of attack defender than we have right now in our arsenal. The campaign is there. I think that he's that guy, but because Deuce does a good job, I think, for the most part as well. But I think when you can rotate Cam and Deuce, I like that a lot better. Again, I don't think this team is going to be a defensive juggernaut any way that we cut it, unless Mitchell Robinson comes back and is the Mitchell Robinson we remember. That could be a game changer. But other than that, I think we're going to have to outscore teams. And even in the Detroit game, we had 111 with 11 missed free throws. So, that means we probably should have had at least 120. And our percentages, I think we're shooting like 50, 40, 84 as a team or something crazy like that. Like, that's how good our offense is. And that's frustrating as a fan, because offense ebbs and flows. Like, you have a bunch of turnovers. We only took 79 shots, I think, against Detroit. That's just not enough shots to win a game. I mean, you need to be you need to be up around 90. And part of that is I think we had 4 offensive rebounds. You know, that's and we didn't win the turnover battle by a lot. I mean, I think we did. I think it was like 18-15, but 3 extra possessions versus, you know, the offensive glass, we were -5. That they ended up taking more shots than us, and it showed. I mean, I know it's a different team. We have different strengths, but I would like to see us keep some of the things that worked well in the old, you know, in the previous years. But we don't have the same personnel, so I guess it's kind of difficult to expect to have similar results when the makeup of the units on the floor is so different.
Yeah. And Tony and Lady and the Chef, when you go, if you want to, you can comment on this. What I saw in Orlando, what I saw in the second half of Charlotte, let me know what's possible for the Knicks. You know, and it now becomes a matter of consistency, right? We saw you do it. You know, we saw that you can do it. Now it's just a matter of consistency, and the way they played in Orlando, you know, that can get you 12. You know, I think, you know, if you could continue that, is that a lot to expect? You know, hope not. You know, I hope not. I'm just really hoping the defense comes along because I don't want to mess with the offense by changing the starting lineup, so to speak. So I'm really like praying that the defense comes along and improve. But Lady and the Chef, just what have you seen defensively, the Detroit game notwithstanding, and do you have hope that Knicks defense can get better?
I think watching that Detroit game, I'm seeing the same repeated cycle, game in, game out. And I think you used the correct word. It's the lack of consistency that I'm not seeing with this Knicks team.
Right.
The Knicks have these moments in games where they'll have a quarter of good defense, but the other 3, they don't play good defense. Detroit, they played a good third quarter of good defense. But I said this before we went live. I heard Jeff say this last week where he said that he doesn't feel like the Knicks have been truly tested yet. And I agree with that wholeheartedly because even when we played Orlando, they didn't have Paolo in that game. Detroit, they have Cade, who's their front runner, their front man. And I think, and I was saying this to you, to Queen and Jeff before we went live. I touched on this briefly. I'm questioning this Knicks team as a whole, and I'm questioning Tom Thibodeau because if he's known to be a defensive minded coach, and this is what he's done with other teams, I'm not seeing it when I'm watching the games. And it's a little concerning for me because if we can't play good defense against teams that we should be beating, hell, even teams that we can beat, yeah, I see the potential and I see what they can do because I'm like, wow, if they only could stick with this, but there's no consistency there. They'll play a quarter of good defense or half a quarter of good defense, but it's not throughout an entire game. And it's like I when I watch the replays of these games, I'm watching the game and I'm specifically looking at the defense and I'm like, I don't get the logic of what this Knicks team is doing where we play in the paint or there seems to be a miscommunication or a misstep when sometimes I saw Precious, I don't know if it was Precious and Josh Hart or if it was Precious and OG, they switched and then one of them didn't go to switch to the other guy. It's just like there's no communication. There's too much crowding in the paint. We're not guarding. We're too late to get out to the perimeter to the 3 to guard the 3. We're always chasing to try to get to the 3-point line. I don't get it. I don't get what this defensive scheme is. I don't get what is being told. And I wish I could be a fly or a reporter, somebody who's in a locker room to hear what Tibbs is saying, to hear who's the vocal leader on this team. I've been saying this on my lives. I'm not understanding what we're doing defensively that's our weak link. We know what this Knicks team could do offensively, but I wonder to what you just said, Queen, like even if they did switch up the starting lineup, is that really going to make a difference if you switch? Because if you're coming in, whether you're starting or you're coming in off the bench, if you can't play defense, you can't play defense. You're not playing defense. So if he switches the starting lineup, what difference is that really going to make? I think collectively, this Knicks roster, they have to have a wake-up call. And I keep going back to shout out to Kareem Grant when he asked the question of what did we lose from the trades that we're missing, that's causing a missing link defensively this season. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, that's a good question. But I think in last year's team, the only weak link on defense was Brunson.
And
This year,
We had iHeart too. That
we
that
had
that's what I'm saying. Brunson was the only weak link. Now you got two,
Right. I
and
agree on
Brunson
that, but
and
I'm
Cat.
saying that that's the big difference between this year and last year. With when Mitch was out of the lineup, Hartenstein was playing
This
elite
is true.
defense, and at the five spot, and Carl Anthony Towns, for all his brilliance, that's not who he is, and so and we did add another nice wing defender and Bridges, who's just kind of rounding into shape. But also, I think team defense takes time, right? Everybody's got to be on a string. It's about communication. It's about a lot of the things you were talking about. So I'm going to preach patience with it, but I'm not necessarily convinced that that's all that's required.
Right.
But I think that to expect a head coach to have two new starters, one of them whom is not known as a really good defender to begin with,
And
and
the other
then
one who's not playing well defensively.
yes, and just to say, well, you're a defensive coach. What's the deal? I think it's going to take some time. And if after 60 games we're still like a walking bucket for the other team down the lane, then we need to revisit that. But it is kind of a curiosity how bad this team has been defensively this year. And it's, to me, it's heartbreaking because any of us, and that's all of us, grew up on the 90s Knicks. Like, that was our culture, that was our identity, and that's kind of, that gritty toughness, that New Yorker,
Yeah.
like, that's just our identity as a people as well. So it kind of goes hand in hand. And now we're like the Golden State Warriors, pre-Golden State Warriors on offense, and we can't, we couldn't stop someone if our life depended on it.
Yeah, I mean that Golden State team also played defense and was able to,
They did.
to get stops. Um, yeah, it's going to be interesting. How much of it is scheme, how much of it is execution or lack thereof, how much of it is, to your point, Jeff, defensive chemistry. You look at Minnesota, and I mentioned this in one of my other shows. I'm not sure which one. They were number one on defense in defense last year. That's not the case this year, and they lost Cat. Cat's not a defensive juggernaut. What's the struggle? They brought in DiVincenzo, who's a really good defender. They brought in Randall, who, when motivated, can be a good one-on-one um, defender. And I just think it's defensive chemistry with them as well. And I'm hoping, I'm hoping it's defensive chemistry with us as well. But we got three defensive players in that starting lineup, and you got Cat and Brunson. And Brunson tries. He has limitations. I think Cat tries as well. Um, he has limitations, but I've seen Cat have some really good um, offensive possessions, and so that lets me know that it's possible. You know, I think the question is it a lot to expect Cat and Brunson to put out that much energy on the defensive end, possession after possession after possession, given how much we lean on them on the offensive end. That being said, you still have to pick your spots. You can't be a cone. You still have to be where you're supposed to be, and there will be times in a game where you do have to double down and dig, regardless of you know the load you're carrying on the offensive end. But yeah, I think Tibbs has to figure out what's the best defensive scheme for this team. For this team, they have to execute it, and I think the last thing is Minnesota gave up and brought in Gobert. Like, they tried Cat at center and they reaped the offensive benefits, but after year after year after year, they just kind of gave up on it and brought in Gobert. You know, um, is that the road the Knicks is going to have to go down um, at some point, and that's going to have its own issues, depending on who that other person is that you're bringing in um, at the center. That's going to have its own potentially its own issues as well.
Well, I
And
think one other thing, sorry to interrupt, but one other thing that I think it's kind of in the Tibbs era, we've been a drop coverage team like the entire
Mhm.
time he's been here. And drop coverage is not Carl Anthony Towns' strong suit at all. And
Mm-mm.
so, in fact, he struggles in drop coverage. And so, in the games when he's in there, he's much more effective when he's, when he's putting pressure on the ball, in fact, rather than,
Right.
dropping, because he's not a rim protector and not really a shot blocker, either one. And so, I think kind of their comfort zone is drop coverage, but right now the personnel doesn't really match that. And so I think
Right.
that's kind of, some of the confusion, perhaps. I don't know.
Mhm.
But, you know, and I don't know that Precious Achiuwa solves that, because I don't think he's that great in drop coverage either. I think he's very switchable, and I think that may be one of the things that we focus on. But I also think that if Carl Anthony Towns gets to play against another big, like a Joker, like a Embiid, like somebody who's got some size where he just has to kind of play one-on-one, I think he holds his own in a lot of those matchups. In the playoffs last year against Joker, he was very good. So I think he has potential there, but I think that's a limited thing. But if you're asking him to play drop and make decisions and protect the rim, you're not putting him in the best position to succeed. So from a schematic standpoint, maybe Lady and the Chef makes a good point. Maybe we do kind of need to figure out a defensive set that's going to be more productive for the players that we have.
Right. And I have seen Cat sometimes in drop, sometimes pressing up, blitzing, doubling. So he has been mixing it up. Tony, your thoughts on?
just back to what we said at the beginning with the slow starts. If we're not excelling defensively and we're relying on our offense to win these games, then it's even more critical to come out from the jump and kind of
Right.
lock in. You know what I mean? Because yeah, that's a hole. That's a hole. It's gonna be a hole until at least Mitchell Robinson returns or Precious Achua is that full conditioning. Because I think he can help in that department as well. And it's been a lot of arguments in the Knicks chat whether or not we're playing drop coverage or we're switching. I think we're mixing it up a lot, and I think the fact that we're not sticking to one philosophy right now, I think that is also hurting us. And
Mm-hmm.
Josh Hart spoke about that before the season even started,
Mm-hmm.
about the confusion on um switching or not switching, and his personal preference as opposed to the game plan.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, if something is not working, I think you do have to switch it. Like, how you're gonna just keep staying with it, stay like that. Drop coverage wasn't working.
But we haven't abandoned it either.
And
That's
that's
my point.
and that's probably why they're confused. That's a great point, Tony.
That's
That makes a lot of sense, because I was trying to figure out what the hell is Josh Hart talking about. Me and Diva was like, he better figure it out. But that's probably why they look like they do defensively, because they don't know, do we drop or do we? They're probably trying to figure, well, Tibbs is telling us to do this, but we're doing that. And then at times they're reading the offense a different way, and they're trying to decide, well, do I go there? But he wants me to do this. Something's got to change. Something's got to change.
For sure. But as a professional, you should. I mean, college players, high school players can play two different defenses. As a professional, you need to be able to like. A matter of fact, we've done it where on a made basket you're playing one defense, and on a missed basket you're playing another defense. So you're a professional. You telling me that you can't execute two different defense? I mean, I'm sure it's we're in this now, we're in that now. Like the idea that you can only play one defense for the entire game, and that's all you can comprehend. Like that's concerning. That's concerning
I
to
don't
me.
think it's a comprehend thing though. I think it's more about number one, communication, because he referenced
Hmm.
that as well. And just having the anchor, the main communicator. You know what I mean? That can navigate you on the court. He may not be the guy in the play, but he could be the guy directing um on when is the prime opportunity to run this one and the other one. Because I think it's about reading, but it's also about communicating. Because if I read one way and you read the other way,
Come on.
we're gonna be doing two different things. And whose fault
Right.
is that? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
we both pointing at each other. So I think that's what I'm referencing more.
Right. Just being on the same page. And everybody knowing what we're doing right now. Right. Yeah.
And I think you get into
No doubt
defensive
about that.
habits too. In other words, you get used to playing certain things a certain way,
That's a good
and
point.
then sometimes if you start to switch it up, it's not that they're incapable, it's just that they've played it this way for so long, your muscle memory kind of
Hmm.
dictates that you do what you've
Hmm.
practiced for a long time, as opposed to just, especially when you're in the heat of the battle, I think you tend to default to your muscle memory as opposed to being sharp. And I think that is maybe one of the reasons, Lady and the Chef, why we see a quarter of good defense, right? Because for that quarter, they're locked in, they're remembering, okay, we're doing this time and this that time, and then in the other quarters they're not as focused, and so it's more reliant on muscle memory, and then they're not ending up getting to the right spots on the floor. They're not communicating well enough, and all of those other things.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to, before we get into, I'm sorry, I was trying to, yeah. I want to get into the game tonight. But I do want to just give a shout out to the chat. Somebody said something. Um, size nine. Is it size nine? Yeah, two-time coach of the year. One of them here. Why would he change a system? It clearly has worked. I mean, this kind of goes back to, are you a coach who implements your system regardless of the players, or are you a coach that um, creates a offensive or defensive system for the players that you have? Um, I've always been on the side of, you have to, what's the best offense and defense for the team that you have, as opposed to trying to fit players into your system. But I'm interested in what you all have to say. Tony, we'll start with you. Jeff, then Lady and the Chef.
I'm sorry. Do me last. I'm in the middle of
Okay.
something.
Okay. Jeff, then Lady and the Chef.
I've never been a fan of trying to put square pegs in round holes. I think that that's one of the mistakes that coaches make too often. Like, you have to see what talent you have, and then based upon what talent you have, you maximize their abilities in whatever system that you're going to run. Uh, you know, if you're going to be that system rigid, then your front office has to be in step with that and provide you with the players that you require to run your system. But if you're just going to bring in the best possible talent, then you need to be a little bit more flexible, in my opinion. And if they run this well, then that's how we're going to play. And if we do this well, then that's what we're going to do. To me, I think it's foolishness to say to a guy who's not good at drop coverage, run drop coverage, and it's equally foolish to say to a guy who not good switching, switch everything, right? That you're setting them up to fail if you're doing that. So to me, I think that you, as a head coach, you kind of have to now, and it also depends on where you're at in your development. In other words, if you're a coach in the first year and you're trying to establish a culture and the players aren't there yet, I don't have any problem with it. Like, okay, run your system so that the players who are going to be here down the road can learn the system. That
Right.
makes sense to me. I don't think that's the situation the Knicks are in right now, though. I mean, this is
Right.
a veteran team. It's a team that allegedly is going to be a championship contender. And if that be the case, you need to figure out the schemes and the systems that work best with the group that you have, especially since changing the personnel is not going to be particularly easy with the new rules.
Yeah. Yeah. Lady and the Chef, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think for one, we got to stop with the excuses for this Knicks team. Like, I saw someone earlier say in the chat that Tibbs is working what Leon Rose gave him. No, I believe prior to all the trades, Tibbs was probably saying to the front office, I'm working with what I have. And remember, let's go back to last year when Leon said, okay, and the front office probably said, okay, listen, he's saying he don't have nothing enough to work with. They started the trades, got rid of RJ, got traded quickly, brought in different pieces. I get that we don't have DiVincenzo. I get that we don't have Randall, and I get that we don't have iHeart. Let's move on, people. We hold on to these ties as players. Let's move on. We don't have them anymore. But we can't hold on to the excuse of because we don't have Isaiah Hartenstein, because we don't have Mitchell Robb, that we're not going to be able to play good defense. And again, I keep pointing the finger to if you're under a coach whose system is mainly dominant upon defense, and he's heavy on defense, it's not showing when I'm watching a basketball game and I'm watching the Knicks play. I don't see the defense correlate to what I'm trying to see. But I've said this before. Thibodeau has been known to take teams that are not doing well and bring them to a better place within their organization. But Tibbs has yet to prove that he can win a championship as a head coach in the National Basketball Association. He hasn't proved that yet. I'm not saying that he can't do that with the Knicks, but you also can't. I don't want to hear the reasoning of, well, Tibbs is working with who we have right now. Okay, yeah, we don't have Mitchell Robinson. You haven't had Carl Anthony for one, maybe two games. But who you have on the roster right now, I want to see better effort defensively, and I'm not seeing that. You can't tell me that this team, this roster that's here, well, this guy doesn't really play good defense, and this one is. It has to be a different way, and these guys have to be able to show that on the floor. It can't just be we keep using every little kind of excuse and avenue as to why. There has to be some kind of change happen here. And I want to see that happen. Again, Tony kind of alluded to this too. Who's the vocal leader? Who's saying, yo, we got to tighten up? Just like Ant-Man called out his team. Who's the vocal leader on this team that's going to say, yo, we got to tighten up? When you're watching a film, who's calling out and saying, okay, pause it right there. See how we all shuffled in the middle? Like, we got to get out there. Where's the effort? I want to see more. Show me that you're more hungry to get these wins, that you're more hungry to get more than 50 wins this season. So I want to see change in that. I don't know. I don't think it's Brunson. I don't know who it is that's the vocal lead on this team. I don't know who's saying it on a coaching staff. I don't know if the assistant coaches are afraid to step on Tibbs' toes because he's the head honcho. I don't know what it is, but change has to come. And I get that we need to be patient, but I don't want it to come too late where we're vying to fight, because I keep saying it. You'll blink and the Knicks could end up in sixth, seventh place in the East. It's going to be a tight race. The competition's a little stiff. Some of these teams that may be in seventh, eighth now, don't let that fool you. After All-Star break, teams start going on a run. And again, this Knicks team could turn it up. I'm not doubting them. But what I'm saying is I want to see a better effort on a consistent basis throughout the remainder of this season defensively from this team. I'm not worried about them offensively. Defensively, I want to see a better effort.
Yeah, I definitely want to see a better effort as well. But I will say, I do think defensive chemistry matters, and I do think it takes time. Now, effort is one thing. That effort is something that should be there every single game. You may not be executing, but the effort should definitely be there. But I do think defensive chemistry does take time, and we've seen that over the course of the years with Thibodeau, that the Knicks are a better team as the season goes on defensively, as because we was complaining about the same thing last year. Well, the perimeter defense, the pick and roll defense, whatever we're complaining about the same things, But as the season goes on, the defense does get better, and I think again defensive chemistry matters. I still think as the season goes on, the defense will get better. Now, the players matter. The players matter. Like this team, I don't see this team as being a top 5 defense. I don't see this team as a top 10 defense. I just don't. I just don't see it. I don't think we have the personnel. I could be wrong. To Jeff's point, if Mitchell Robinson comes back and he's peak Mitchell Robinson, that's one thing. but Cat's going to be in the starting lineup playing 35, 36 minutes a game. That's not going to change. It's just not going to change. Brunson is going to be playing 34 to 36 minutes a game. That's not going to change. And neither one of those guys are defensive juggernauts, right? So, yes, you're going to bring Mitchell Robinson in, but how many minutes is he going to play? You're going to bring players off the bench. How many minutes are they going to play? So I agree with you, Lady and the Chef. The defense has to be better. They have to be more consistent. The effort has to be there. But I think defensively, the ceiling on this team defensively is lower than last year's team, in my opinion. I don't think this is going to be top 10 defense. And it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be a top 10 defense given our offense. But you can't be a bottom 10 defense, which is where we are right now. We can't. You can't be. So we do have to be better. I think we will be better. But I don't think this is a top 5 or top 10 defense. I don't know. I'm interested in what you guys think. Like, what's the ceiling on the defense?
As is, as
Yeah.
currently constructed, like or at full strength.
That's a great at full. Then we got to get into at what full strength.
I mean,
Like
right
like
now,
what's Mitchell Rob?
without Mitchell Robinson, I don't think we crack top 10. That's for sure. You know what I mean? I think we probably peak at maybe 15, 14. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Without Mitchell Robinson, with him, I think we could get into that top 10. And that's where we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Tony. 12 to 15 sounds about right, somewhere in that range with what we have right now. And that's kind of, best of, well, it's the ceiling. So it's the best, if everybody's clicking and doing what they're supposed to, 12 to 15, and again, Robinson could change all that, but I wouldn't bet your mortgage on Robinson coming back. I mean, he doesn't have the history of doing that. And I'd love to see him. I mean, it's my favorite player. I want to see him on the court, but I want $1 million too. And that did not come in either.
Yeah. Keyshawn said 12 to 16 is fine. Appreciate you joining us, Keyshawn. Rick James said you can't win a chip with a bottom 15 defense. And come on. Is that Luke Skywalker visions? I hope I got that right. We don't get to top 12 in defense, we will not win a championship this year. I think it's a sliding scale. The better your defense is, your offense, the better your offense is, your defense doesn't have to be as great. And I believe in that more than I believe in the inverse, that the better your defense is, the worse your offense can be. I just think in this day and age, with the offenses that are out there now, a top 5 off defense and you can't score the ball, forget it. I would prefer a top 5 offense and a top 12 defense over the inverse. Any time. If you don't get to top 12, listen, the Knicks are on pace to have a historic offense. And we haven't even, in my opinion, scratched this. I think the offense can do more. I think the offense can be more efficient. We could do better in terms of recognizing the mismatches and taking advantage of. Like, I still feel we're not totally there offensively, and already we're on a historic pace. But I'm not fooling myself to believe in that this defense is going to win you a championship. So I think we're all on the same page. As far as that's concerned, it's just a matter of how much better does the defense need to be. But I think we're all on the same page that it needs to be better. And if it's not better, it's going to always fall on the coach. Like, prior to this year, I was like, yeah, listen, I don't want to hear nothing about firing Tibbs. He doesn't have the roster. But once he got the roster, the first thing I said was, Tibbs is on the clock. And the clock, championship clock. You're on the clock right now. You're on the clock. So, um, we'll see. And even if it's not all his fault, the buck starts and ends with the coach. So that's always the case. We play Toronto tonight. Just quickly, they're not a good team. Emmanuel quickly is hurt, so we're not going to see him today. He's still recovering from, I forgot, the injury, so he won't be there tonight. RJ Barrett is playing better. Still, he's on my fantasy team, so I keep up with him. Inefficient nights, sometimes efficient nights, but as far as his counting stats, he's like, I want to say 18 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Like, his counting stats are good. Scotty Barnes is there, do it all player. Olenek, I think Olenek is back as well. The Knicks always respond to a bad loss. I expect us to like win this game. If we don't, I'm gonna be super concerned that you didn't rebound from that effort against Detroit. But what are you looking for, Tony? We'll start with you in tonight's game. Any keys to the game? Any matchups?
Number one priority is no more slow starts. You know what I mean? Let's start the game off good. Don't let RJ Barrett continue the run that he's been on this year. He's having a career year. So kind of be mindful of that. I'm sure he has a little extra juice playing against us as well.
Hmm.
I don't know if Quickly's playing. I haven't seen him in
He's
any.
injured.
He is injured, right? I haven't
He's injured.
been looking for him. That's my guy. So yeah, keep RJ out. Don't let him dominate and have some type of career game here, which he's probably looking to do. Those are my main
He's
two
looking
things.
to do.
Those are my main two things. You know what I mean? But obviously win the game, finish the game, but no more slow starts. We can't afford it. And they've played teams well, even though their record is what it is. They've
Right.
played teams tight all year. So yeah, take care of business.
Jack?
Well, shout out to Tsunami, but just shut down RJ Barrett and keep the Barrett hive quiet. That's first and foremost in my mind, because if RJ blows up, you're going to be hearing we gave up him and IQ for OG, and I don't want to hear any of that. So much love to Barrett. I hope he has good games against everybody else. Us hit game winners against the Boston Celtics all you want to. That won't hurt my feelings, but I hope he has one of those 2 for 22 nights that we've all seen him have in the past tonight. Focus, but the real key is who's playing. Like
Right.
what Knicks are on the floor, and I think that makes a difference. I think if Towns isn't
Yes.
there, I think we're going to struggle again. Obviously, if Brunson's not there, I think we're going to equally struggle. If both of those guys play, I'll be real disappointed if they're both in the lineup and we don't get the W. That's for sure. But even if Cat doesn't play, we have more than enough talent to win.
Correct.
But we need to take care of business and do what we've done in the past, which is not have 2 bad games in a row. So thank you, Nostalgic Nick. So they're going to have to step up.
And rebound the ball.
Yep.
And figure it out. I mean, I do think we have to play a different game with Cat there. You're not going to have the spacing and all of the cutting and all of that. Figure it out. You still have enough to get it done. Lady Nisha?
Actually, I saw where Stephen Bondi said everyone's playing except Mitchell Robinson. So I'm not
Come
sure
on,
if
nostalgic.
yeah,
Come on now.
I was looking at up while Jeff was speaking. So I agree with you all that there's no reason why the Knicks should lose. Also because Toronto just lost their last 2. So don't allow them to get a win against you guys. But no, for my keys, less turnovers, keep it to 10 or less, defensive stops, boxing out, guard the perimeter, and let's make our free throws tonight as well. The Knicks have to figure out how to play together as a team defensively, get some stops, box out, and play with more energy and more intensity.
Yeah, and I think help your defense by not creating advantages right from the start. The point of attack defense. Once you allow a team a player to get in the key, you're in rotation. If they whip the ball fast enough, they're gonna find an open shot.
Right.
So hopefully our point of attack defense is on point. And I've said this multiple times. I don't know if this is a scheme or not. The Knicks to me just over rotate. They just like one dribble toward the rim, two people are trying to contain the dribble. I just don't get it. Now you're in rotation. All they got to do is swing the ball. You cannot move as fast as the ball. They're going to find the open guy. Now everybody is wondering why they so open, because you cannot move as fast as the ball if a team is whipping the ball around. Try to keep your guy in front of you, hedge a little bit to stop the drive, get back. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's the same thing, but it's something that you just put yourself in terrible position when you're in rotation. So they have to do that, control the balls, hit your free throws. Like, this is what I'm saying about the last game against Detroit. So uncharacteristic with
Mhm.
the, like, so sloppy with the things you can control. Cat's not there. Okay, fine, we get it. Payne's not there. Okay, fine, we get that. What does that lead to turnovers? Does that mean you can't hit your free throws? Like, yeah, I'm really concerned about the starts. I just don't that that's a mental thing. That's a mental thing. Coming out sharp, ready to play from the tip. You would expect that with a young team. The Knicks are not a young team. They're young together. So maybe that's an issue. Maybe. But if you've played in the league, you already know you got to come out ready for the tip. And I just haven't seen that from the Knicks. The team get confidence. Now it's a harder job. Now it's harder. Tone, you want to say something?
I was just wondering, we gotta kind of put OG on Barnes, right? Because I was thinking we need him on RJ because RJ's strength. I'm worried about Mikal, um, you know, defensively,
Right.
because RJ's pretty strong. So I was just wondering about that matchup, but I guess I don't know if Barnes would be any better of a matchup for Mikal. You might
He's
have
not
to.
as strong as Barrett, but you know, I don't think
He's
he's as
taller though,
strong as
right?
Barrett. No, I think
No,
they're about
same
the
size.
same, six
Okay,
seven,
then
6'6", 6'7". Um, but Barnes has the ball in his hand a lot, particularly with Barrett as well, but particularly with Achiuwa.
yeah, I know they just had the stat 28% usage rate for Barrett this year.
Wow,
So
wow.
highest
Barnes
of
missed a
his
lot
career.
of games too. So
That's a
when
good
Barnes
point.
was
That's a
out,
good point. It went up.
Barnes and Quickly was out, and Barrett was pretty much the entire, a good part of the offense, I would say. Yeah. Um, Anybody, Jeff? You had an opportunity to speak
Well, what
on
I was going to say
Toronto.
is part of it is we got to avoid the Malik Beasley thing or whatever. The guy, you let him get a couple wide open shots early on. Like he hits a couple threes, all of a sudden he's hot and he's 7 of 10 for the game. And
Hmm.
you're a team that doesn't shoot the three that well is 18 of 36 because they've gotten good looks at the basket and you've let them get into a rhythm. So, uh, my word for the night is disruptive. We've got to disrupt what they want to do on offense. We've got to get into them, make them do things that they don't want to do. Um, you know, I yeah, I think that's going to be a key. And of course, what everybody's been saying, the turnovers were especially like Brunson had 5 turnovers. That's
Right,
crazy. And it wasn't like it was because of great defense. To me, like all of his turnovers were just careless. Like,
right,
and that
right,
was kind of the Knicks' night. They were just careless the entire night. So be
right.
careful this time and you'll get a win.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, for sure. Tony Crow, Nicks and Bruises, I appreciate you. Um, just let them know real quick when they can find you.
Look out for me tomorrow night. I'm gonna do something tomorrow night. I actually just changed my shift, so it's probably gonna be sometime around 9. But yeah, look
I
out for
might be
that.
able to make that.
Sounds good. I'll reach out.
Yeah. Just-
Well,
Jeff,
just
can you
thanks
hear
for
me?
being here. Let
Oh,
me be here. Tony Crow, salute to you. Lady and the Chef, always a pleasure. You always make me think about things I never considered. I love your takes. You're amazing. And the hostess with the mostest, Queen. It's always a pleasure.
appreciate you. Appreciate you. And Jeff, you can find him on the Just Nick and Show, Local Sports Talk, and he also has a daily sports talk, happily ever after, um, which will be in the description. I had to rush today, but it'll be in the description. Lady and the Chef, where can they find you and the two next chicks?
Yeah, catch us on Sundays at 11 and Thursdays we will be on at 7 p.m. So check us out.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate all three of you. I appreciate the chat, which was very active, and we definitely appreciate the replay game. If you haven't already, subscribe to Nicks and Bruises, subscribe to Two Nicks Chicks, subscribe to Dope Soul Sports Talk. We all have our individual channels as well. Special shout out to Simeon Russell, the creator of Nothing But Knicks, for giving me this platform, the Queen's Court. This is my spot right here, Monday, regardless of what's going on my channel. I appreciate you, Sam. And for those who don't know, you can go to mbkfm.com if you want to join us in Washington, D.C. for the New York Knicks versus the Washington Wizards. I also found really good hotel prices at a nice boutique hotel that I stayed in before. I was super surprised to find that. If you've never hung out with the MBK fam, you're missing something. You're missing something. All right. Until next time, appreciate you.